We are recording.
Hey, good evening. This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the provisions extended by Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, signed by the governor on June 16, 2021, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. These provisions suspended the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 6 p.m. I am Linda Lukowski, the chair of the school committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Suzanne?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Maureen?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Mayette? Paul Mayette?
He did say it, but his sound is not working very well.
Okay, I didn't hear him. Paul Lees?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Narissa?
Here and I can hear you.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian?
Here and I can hear you.
Shannon?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Beth?
Oops. I'm here and I can hear you.
Catherine?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Kyle?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Nicole?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Anna?
I'm here and I can hear you.
And we have Kaylee here. Kaylee, can you hear us?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convened remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Do we have any members of the public?
We have one, and I don't believe it's Margot
Okay.
Ryan. I don't see her raising her hand.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so by raising your hand on the video call using the raised hand option on the participant's screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. So there is nobody that would like to speak, correct? Okay, Brian.
So the one thing I was just going to check is, Paul Mayette, can you hear us? And you want to just test, making sure we can hear us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
There you are. Okay, there you
All
are.
right.
Just making sure we had all of you here. So good evening, everybody. So I feel like I should apologize. We're remote. This was not to be, but as we were talking about it last week, it made sense, just given the fact that people are in and out and shifting as needed based on cases. So I think just to make sure that we can have everyone we need around the table or around the screen, it made sense to make sure that we are, that made sense to shift it to remote. So we are kicking off the fiscal 23 budget process. This is different in that the past couple of years have been extremely different and other. Obviously, we completed a fiscal 21 budget 2 days later, the pandemic emerged. Last year was almost to just, let's just keep what we got and move it into the following year. We were strongly in survival mode. So as we started to move towards this year, obviously we hoped that this year would be more normal. It's obviously turning out to be anything but. We look to next year, we hope it will be normal, but we have to plan for that it might not be. But as we move to next year, the leadership team is taking a very traditional approach to the budgeting process and taking a look at the needs of every building and adjusting accordingly. So tonight we have the first of 10 presentations. So we'll have the first 3, which is the 3 elementary principals, to present to you their needs. We'll have the opportunity to hear from the 3 principals individually, and then obviously committee members can ask questions and engage in a discussion. Tomorrow night we'll have the middle school, high school, as well as middle school, high school athletics. And then Thursday night we'll have all of the district departments, if you will, and administrators presenting and having a discussion kind of more in individual items, but also kind of in the aggregate items like personnel lines across the district and how those impact. So without any further ado, unless there are any questions from the committee on process and so forth, I'm going to turn the baton over to Beth as our veteran, our resident veteran principal at this point, to show us how it's done. So Beth, you ready to roll?
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone. I just have one question. I know sometimes when we present, we're in person if someone has a question. So I'm not quite sure as I'm presenting, if someone has a question, how we maneuver that, Brian. So I just want to make sure.
So if I can ask, I mean, you certainly, committee members, you can certainly raise your hands, but if you're all on, hopefully the Zoom app and can raise your hand within the app, that's the easiest way to see it. And I'll watch for that. And Beth, if you
Okay.
just see me trying to get your attention.
Okay.
So I think that's probably the easiest if that works for the committee, and we'll take it that way.
All right. Sounds perfect.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to get started. You all have the budget book, so I'm going to start on page 1. The school council and at NES, there are 3 positions that we are looking to add to our budget this year. I've had the 0.5 reading interventionist in the budget before. We believe that we really need to front load, and more so now with the pandemic and noticing students have some gaps in their learning, and we really need to reinforce what they've missed. And we want to make sure that we catch those students early and provide reading intervention. We currently have 4% of our students who need specialized reading programs. And we currently are contracting 2 tutors to help provide those services. So it makes sense to me to make that 0.5 reading interventionist full-time, so we can make sure we're front loading, but also provide those specialized reading instruction to students who need them. We also hope to gain a full-time social worker. This social worker will provide some counseling to students. We currently have a school psychologist that we're paying to come in to help my guidance counselor, Alicia Kenyon, provide services. We're finding more students have anxiety and social emotional impacts from the pandemic, in addition to those students that we've always had who need counseling. So we feel like that would be really helpful. And also someone to work with the families. Oftentimes families are in crisis and they need support, whether it's obtaining outside resources or just really having someone to talk to. Or as we have more and more kids come into school who've experienced trauma, it's just an additional support that I really think that we need to provide for families. I do a lot of that now. I know Mr. Estuccio does. And I know a lot of it's put on the plate of Alicia Kenyon, our school guidance counselor, who is really having a hard time managing what she has now. It really peaked last year with the pandemic. So I'm thinking that this is something that we really need to provide our students. And then I received a letter from my 5th graders, probably about a month ago, asking me to open up the makerspace room. That's something I've always opened up for students at recess time. They wrote a wonderful letter. They listed all the reasons. In fact, I met them up there. We organized it to get it open. I'm trying to get up there. I'm hoping maybe next month I can open it a couple days a week at their recess time. They go up, they create all sorts of things. I teach them the design process when we have challenges, and it's something that they want, and it gives students a different opportunity rather than going out to recess. But I really think that this is a space that we need to utilize more during the school day, not just recess time. If you're doing a science lesson or you're giving them some type of a STEM challenge, they need additional time to do that. 20 minutes at recess is not enough time. And it's very frustrating for some of the students to go up there and start something and not be able to finish. I'm not quite sure if we need a full-time STEM teacher. So in my proposal, and I think Catherine and Nicole, we talked about this, that a 0.3, whether we have that person here a week at a time or they come certain days of the week, it's something that's needed. I don't believe that we're doing enough around STEM for our students. We have a beautiful lab at NES and it's not being utilized. We have young engineers here. The things that they create in the makerspace room are unbelievable. In the corner, just so you know what it looks like, I have a table of Legos. There's a lot of creating with Legos. But there's also a whole space where I have tons of recycled material. And when I first opened up the makerspace room, I was amazed the children would come in and just create things. But I always bring them back to that design process, which correlates to what we're doing in the classrooms. And I try to incorporate vocabulary that they're learning, whether it's Inspire or STEM scopes, to reinforce what they're learning in the classroom. So I think it's a need. I think 0.3 is a place to start before we bring someone full-time and we're not totally utilizing. I think 0.3 is a real reasonable place to start. And then we could design how we want to use that space. So classroom teachers could go up with their students and there could be some co-teaching. I'm not really available during the day to do that with them, but I try to set aside some time in my schedule so they have that opportunity, because it's just a wonderful lab. And when first grade comes up, I'm standing there waiting for them and I can hear the little feet coming up the stairs. They run to the makerspace room. It's something that is exciting for them. And I really would like to see it utilized more. And to make that happen, I really could use some help with that. Okay, page 2. Our sections are pretty much staying the same. You may have questions about the numbers going. If you look at grade 5 for next school year, the numbers seem low. I'm advocating to keep those numbers low for the students that we have in grade 4. There are a lot of needs, a lot of social emotional needs that really can impact the classroom environment when they don't feel successful. And I have to say this year, they're doing a great job. The sections are low. Yes, and it might look a little alarming, but it's working. And I would not be doing my job as a principal if I didn't advocate for those students. And I really think that keeping those sections low is going to help them learn. Because if we don't have the social emotional part down, they're not learning in the classroom. And I can assure you this year with these numbers this low, they are learning in the classroom. And like I said, there are a lot of needs. I thought about maybe putting them to 2 sections, but I don't think that would be best for the students. So our numbers going into next year are pretty much the same number of students. One thing I do want to talk about is we really never know when we go into preschool registration, how many students are going to be coming in. I kept it at 50, but when I was looking at the census and the current students that we know about who are here, it could be as high as 89 preschoolers registering. I don't think it will be that high, but there's a possibility. So I wanted to make sure that I documented that in the budget. I do find that a lot of people didn't send their kids to preschool with the pandemic. People had fear, so they kept their kids out. But I know that I've had a lot of phone calls recently asking about preschool. So looking at the numbers on the census and what we know, it could be as high as 89. I don't think it will be, but I just wanted to put that out there to let you know that there are a lot of little young ones being born in Newberry, it seems. Moving on to page 3. Staffing's pretty much stayed the same. You'll see in the regular ed professionals, 0.3, that's the makerspace teacher. If you look down at the reading and math specialist, that's gone up a 0.5, that's the reading interventionist. And then the social worker, you will see that reflected in the guidance professionals. So I'm asking for 1.8 increase in staffing. Everything else is working, and I think we can maintain those current numbers. On page 4, I just have a little more information about the 3 positions that we are asking for at NES, the social worker, the reading interventionist, and the STEM teacher. And I also have the salaries there of what that increase would be. And then if we move on to page 5, you're going to see some changes in regular education supplies. That's because of the increase in demand of supplies. Teachers really haven't got an increase in what they use in the classroom, but as we research the price of items that we're going to need, there's going to be an increase, and I want to make sure that teachers can do their job. So there is an increase in that. Same with instructional materials and books. And then instructional technology looks like a big bump, but when I get to the later part of the budget, you'll be able to see a lot of that is from the iReady math and reading instruction. We have 144 students that need that intervention. So that's where the majority of the increase is coming from on that. So the change from last year to this year is $10,908. On to page 6. Since I've been here, I've had a lot of these same capital improvements requests. I am very pleased that we were able to replace over the holiday break 3 classrooms, the music room, and 2 classrooms in the circle with new floors. We had the old carpets that were buckling, didn't have the best odors coming out of them. And especially with the mask, it was kind of impacting some teachers and students. So we've taken those rugs out and we've replaced it just with tile, and it looks wonderful. And I would like to continue doing that in some of the other rooms at NES who have the old carpet that some of it has tape on it where it's just old. A lot of these capital improvements are just cosmetic at NES. We need paint, removing other carpets, like I said. The office and the health office, we would like to take the carpet out and put some fresh tile in here as well. And just the painting of the building. The building interior has not been painted since 1998. And I really notice it when I bring a new family into NES and I walk them around. That's when it really hits me that we need some cosmetic work inside the building. It's looking old. And then the 3rd and 4th grade and the kindergarten corridors, the tiles there, they've really started to crack. And I'll share a funny story. I was walking a preschooler down to preschool one day, and he looks up at me and he says, "Ms. Yando, how come the school's cracked?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? The school's cracked?" He goes, "Look at the floor, it's all cracked. Why is my school cracked?" So a preschooler's noticing the cracked floors. So in the kindergarten hallway, you see that. And then the 3rd and 4th grade, a lot of the classrooms there in the hallway, the tiles are just cracking. So eventually I would like to see that replaced. And then the restrooms need a little bit of work. The petitions are old, and my head custodian, Michael Susi, can fix anything. He's made them stay up, but they're getting old, and I'm afraid we're going to get to the point where we're not going to be able to get them to stay up. So we really need some cosmetic work. I don't really have an exact price. We're doing a lot of researching of options and the cost. So if we knew that some of this could be done, we would proceed more and get exact quotes. But I am happy with the 3 classrooms that we got new floors in. And then moving along to page 1 of the supplement, there's really no changes there. Page 2, you see the increase in school specialty and WB Mason. That's classroom materials for teaching and instruction. Everything I have here went up by a little bit just because of the supply and demand and the increase in prices. And then you can look at instructional materials and books to see where the difference is there. We've increased all that a little bit because of the supply and demand as well. And page 3, if you go down to instructional technology, Brain Pop is something, it's an animated educational site for kids K-6. All the classroom teachers use that. Jen Brown uses it a lot in the library, and when she does instructional technology, there's an increase in that when she researched it. Tumble Books is a database of children's ebooks that we find valuable in that. So that is new this year. We did take a few things out that we had in here that we weren't utilizing. And then the big jump, as I said, is that iReady Instructional. That's reading and math intervention. We have 144 students who will need that next year and who are using it this year, but not to the degree. The Online Math League increase, that is, whoops, I'm on the wrong. Oh, my lines got messed up here. The Online Math League did increase a little. And then Empowering Writers Hub, that's the teachers are able to use a hub. It's online to enhance their writing curriculum. That's what we use. Teachers are utilizing that now, but the number of teachers that we would need that for, that is a new increase. Trying to see what else. That's pretty much it there for the increase. If you look to the next page, you will see the the things, MobiMax, Reading Eggs, TrueFlex, and Math Form at Drexel that we're no longer using. So we would like to shift that money toward the reading intervention and the other things that I have the increase on. So like I said, the increase is $10,900. Now, are there any questions at this point?
So Paul Lees has a question.
So Beth, I just, on your capital improvements request, are those listed in priority or are they just listed in general?
They're listed in general, Paul. I've just, a lot of them have been here since I've been principal here, and I'm in my 9th year, and it's just, we have made some, the floors have been the main thing. We replaced the floor in the small gym. That used to be on there, so that the town took care of that. The roof at NES, the town has done a great job with that. And then we're starting to replace those 3 classrooms. But a lot of it's just wear and tear, Paul, that over time that needs to be done in the building.
What would be helpful for us, Beth, going forward is if you could identify like the top 3 and try to crunch the numbers just so that we could have something to work with.
Yep, I can definitely work with Kyle on that. Yep.
And just to add too, so you remember we're having the discussions with the 3 towns, with the regional agreement, the landlord tenant, and part of that would be teasing out what is the towns and what is that we do, like Beth described. If we were doing 3 or 4 rooms and the cost was, I'm making this up, I don't know the cost, $15,000, then that would be a project we do. If it was replacing all of the floors in the building and it was, make up another number, $250,000, that's obviously something we'd have to work with the town and figure out. So that is an ongoing discussion with that, as Beth said, with the town, and they've been great chipping away at it. But it is definitely, it is now the oldest building in the district since its last renovation, notwithstanding the middle school, high school. So.
And Paul, when they came in to give us estimate on those 3 classrooms, we had them go around to each of the classrooms. So we do have some figures for that. Correct, Kyle, on that?
That's correct. Yep. So I think they scoped out a dozen rooms in that vicinity to see what it would entail. And then we prioritized those with the most urgent need, the 3 that Beth mentioned. for this particular
Yeah,
project.
and I would say the hallways are a need too, but we'd have to decide if we're gonna go with the type of tile that we put in the classroom or the tile that we currently have in the hall rooms that you have to wax. The new tile that we put in the classrooms is the same tile that Nicole has over at Pine Grove that doesn't require as much maintenance as what we currently have here now. And I would say, Paul, the bathrooms are a top priority for me.
All right, Linda, do you want me to just call on people or do you want to do it? I think she said me. So Maureen.
Okay, I guess I don't really have a question. I just have more of a comment, especially to the newer members on our committee that, you know, I have seen, especially this third and fourth grade quarter, tile flooring requested every year since I've been on this committee since 2015. So I just get concerned that the longer we let things go, the more problems will arise, as we've seen in our middle school, high school building assessment. So I get worried when we start, you know, passing things off from year to year. It could become a health and safety. I mean, health carpets, why we have carpets in a classroom still, I don't know. I really think we need to get all of the carpets out. But also, I think we need to pay attention to the tile and that has, you know, been showing a lot of wear and tear for many years. That's all.
Narissa?
Thanks, Brian. And I apologize, Beth, as I feel like I do every year. You're always the first elementary school principal. And a lot of times there are requests in common, and I feel like I'm always focusing on you because you're the first one up. So before, I just want to second what Paul said. I think, you know, Maureen is right that obviously that these have been on here for a long time. I think it would really help to understand where the priorities are, what's a safety concern versus aesthetics, and kind of having a ballpark, because that's one of the things that we do find, right, is it's sometimes much easier to look at an $8,000 cost or a couple of those versus looking at a $75,000 cost. And you know, to Brian's point as well, we're still working that out with the town. And I know where we set that threshold when we were first having those discussions, it was like $5,000 or something like that. And now they're far above that. So you know, as far as where that threshold is. So I think that would be really helpful moving forward. And I would even welcome seeing that as part of this budget cycle. I think that would be helpful to just have a more defined document, if that's a possibility, as we move through the budget cycle here. On the positions, can you talk about, and I know with a number of these, you know, you're mentioning specifically, you know, pandemic instruction and kind of helping those students who were in the younger grades as a reading specialist, and talking about, you know, the trauma that's kind of come along during the pandemic for the social worker. Can you talk about if these are short term? I guess I'm trying to understand if this is a response or if this is something that you believe is going to be a long-term need, you know, over the years. Are we looking at these being, I know it's impossible to see it, but are they a 1-year position, a 3-year position, a 10-year position? Can you kind of give us an idea on that?
I've had social worker in my budget before, Narissa. I feel like there's a need. I think even before the pandemic, we had students who needed more support than we almost could provide for one guidance counselor in the building. So it's hard to say. I would like to think that it wouldn't be long-term, but I really don't know, because I mean, a few years ago, I never even envisioned a pandemic. And, you know, some of the kids who are presenting anxiety now never had anxiety before. I have some kids who loved the remote and they came back to the school and they fell apart. So that's really hard to answer. But I do feel like my guidance counselor has needed support for a while, because it's not just, you know, she sees students on IEPs and she writes the progress notes, but then there's another whole group of kids who just need those daily check-ins. And then there's another whole group of kids who might, you know, have a major meltdown and she has to stop what she's doing and go to those kids. So when that happens, the kids who need to see her don't get seen, and it's just kind of, unravels at times. We do have times like that in the building where we're all kind of running to help these kids. And then I've never spent more time since I've been principal on the phone with parents, just talking to them, supporting them, helping them figure out where they need to go to get support for their children. Parents are trying to get their kids counselors. There's a waiting list. So I don't know. That's kind of, I would like to think it would be short term, but I don't know.
Can I answer more boldly? This
Yeah.
is not a short-term position.
No.
There's just not. Right. I mean, the reality is, I would love to think that the world is going to correct, but the last decade, right, all the stats we've seen, it's the last decade and just exacerbated, all the issues exacerbated in the last 22 months. So it's just fast-tracked kind of an inevitable crisis point, but the crisis point isn't fixed in a year or 5 years, or maybe in a decade, we're going another direction, but these are foreseeable future requests.
Okay. And the same question for a reading interventionist?
I think that is long-term. I've had that in my budget before. We really sometimes have to piecemeal getting services to kids, and it can be difficult. I think that is a needed position. We find we try to, I know Margot Ryan, my reading specialist, is on here. We try to go into kindergarten. She does a great job working with Kelly Mahan, the reading interventionist, and figuring out how we're going to provide these kids, and really sitting down. And the special educators, we have instructional assistants. We meet together, we really collaborate, but sometimes we just can't get to all the kids, and it's getting more and more difficult. So I would see that being long-term. And of course, you always want to front load. I mean, those reading skills in K to 2 are so important. You want to front load and make sure those kids have solid skills. That's the foundation of everything they're doing. Even in mathematics, I mean, they might have good number sense, but if they can't read the word problems and they can't read what's in the book, it impacts them. Social studies, science. So I'm such a strong believer in starting to front load, identifying those kids in kindergarten and making sure we start there. And then hopefully by grade 2, and we have had some students who we front loaded with, by the time to get to 3rd grade, they're in a great place. So I cannot speak enough about front loading, and the more help we have, the better off we're going to be.
Okay, thank you. Back to the social worker real quick. I know it's pretty well known that these are extremely difficult to hire, and I'm seeing these requests from all 3 elementary schools, which I think 1 LICSW is a unicorn, right? And 3 is, I don't know. I don't know. So I guess my question for you is there a plan B if you can't fill this position and still have this need? Is this something that, and maybe this is a, general principal's question, or maybe a Shannon Nolan question as well, like, can we contract more? Is there an option to, if money was dedicated in the budget for this, are there other options to be able to get these supports for kids if we can't find someone to hire? Because I don't know, just having heard from other districts, they can't find them.
Well, I'm also thinking school adjustment counselor. If we can't find maybe someone who's a licensed social worker, get a school adjustment counselor, because they can help with this as well. So ideally you'd want a licensed social worker, but if you can't get one, to me, the next plan would be to look for a school adjustment counselor.
Okay.
I'd also say it's more of a rolling personnel hiring than a classroom teachers, right? So classroom teachers are very cyclical. We know we want to post by April, May, and someone's looking for a job for next year. People change all the time right now, but generally, administrators, it's a kind of a July 1st to June 30th. Teachers tend to look for jobs across the spring if they want to move and make a jump after the summer. LCSWs tend to be coming from various different pools, and having experience with some of them, right? Education can be an attractive job compared to some of the other work. So I think if we market it right, I would say that are we likely to find 3, if we're talking about 3 elementary for September? Maybe not. But if we can hire 2 and there's another one in the works, that would continue into the fall, and we keep pushing to hire the right person.
Okay.
But no doubt, hiring is very challenging right now, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I guess my question there is I'm hopeful that there's a plan B that's being considered behind the scenes, because I'm just, again, having heard. My last question is, again, this is, I think, sorry, not my last question, but close to the last. On the makerspace teacher, I would love to hear that defined a little bit more about what you're looking for. But I'm also curious if there's going to be requirements beyond having a body in the classroom. Is this going to involve a shift in the schedule to potentially put in another special? Is it going to involve curriculum purchases? I know I noticed the 3D printer in, I think it was in yours. Yeah, it was in yours. In there, but I guess I just find this a little bit amorphous right now. What else is going to be involved in this type of a position coming on board?
Well, I think there would also be planning with teachers around certain units in STEM Scopes and Inspire. And we do have 3D printers up there that we're not utilizing right now. In the past, I could see the person training the students on the 3D printer. I'm not well versed in the 3D printer. When I first got the 3D printers up there, I had a 6th grade student who was well versed, and I had him train 5th grade student. And my cycle's kind of, with the pandemic, it broke the cycle. But I had students training students, but there's so much you could do. So I could see instruction with the 3D printers. I could see collaboration and team teaching with the teacher. And just that whole design process fits in with the standard. So there's so much we can do with that. If it was approved and I knew I had the person for a week, we plan that way. If I knew I had them certain days a week, we plan that way. But I could see grade levels signing up, teachers signing up. So I just think it's a powerful position.
So this is kind of an open, what I'm hearing from you is this is kind of an open the door and see what the possibilities are. And there might be additional asks down the road. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I think we need to start at point 3 to see how we would utilize this person and then move forward. I wouldn't want to bring someone in more than point 3 right now. I think it's a good way to that's what we thought. If we share the position across the district, every school can kind of work with this person and figure out how we can support the kids around engineering. And there's so much you can do in the makerspace room. I mean, we're up there measuring. I mean, it's just, it's really provides a lot of enrichment too for kids, which I don't think as a district we always do enough enrichment for students. We like to think we do, but quite honestly, that is an area we have a lot of kids who are very mathematical, who can strive in a situation like that.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree. I was one of the Engineering Friday moms for 5th grade at Pine Grove. And so spent a lot of time in there and seeing what could come out with lunar rovers and everything else that the kids built was phenomenal. It's a process for them that I don't think they get to go through probably enough, because it definitely challenged a lot of them in ways that they hadn't been challenged before. My last question for you was on those preschool numbers that you mentioned. Obviously quite a difference there. Do you have a plan if the numbers come in higher?
I think we'll make a plan to at preschool registration. Once we know how many are coming in, then I think we'll make our plan there. I was kind of blown away when I sat down with my administrative assistant to see the kids on the census, the students we have here. There's a potential for that many. Like I said, I don't think we will have that many, but it could be. I mean, a lot of people didn't enroll their kids in preschool. I've talked to people on the phone and said, we want to keep them home because of the pandemic. This was last year, so I could see more kids coming in, but I don't know. I just wanted to put that number down because when I did all the math and calculated it out, it came to that and I was a little shocked. So I wanted to put it in there, but I put 50 because I think 50 to 60 is probably more reasonable, but I really don't know until we have the registration, which will be the end of January here. That's when they were pre-register.
Okay, thank you.
So just historical context for folks who haven't gone through this process on the committee. So we adjust, preschool's a tuition-based program, so we adjust the staffing based on the need. So obviously, if there's 20 more students coming in paying more tuitions, we have more tuition dollars to hire more staffing. So it's the kind of the anomaly, right? Especially as we hopefully we're going to get rid of full tuition-based kindergarten, and next year it'll be completely free. So it'll be the only tuition program. So it's part of the general fund and part of the district program, but it's kind of separate in the way that the funding works. So Paul Goldner.
Two questions and a comment, so I'll sandwich that. My first question was about those class sizes again. You hinted at a discussion about the fourth grade, and looking at the numbers, next year's sixth grade is by far the smallest, but the numbers you're talking about in pre-K, it looks like those could be a big kindergarten class after those sixth graders graduate. So could we be looking at an increase in staffing needed the following year if we were to, cut down that fourth grade class size, or cut down that fourth grade?
The following year, yeah. I know a few years ago I had a cohort that I fought to get them. I think they were maybe 2, and I fought to get them into 3 because of the needs. We did it for 1 year. Then the following year, I reduced them to 2, and it made the difference. So that could be Paul. Sometimes at NES, we have kids that exit in 5th grade too. And then when we go into 6th grade, over the summer, I think it was last year actually, or a couple years ago, I thought I had enough for 3, but we technically only had enough for 2 sections. So that is a possibility.
And then the comment, I think echoing what Narissa was just talking about, it does feel like that maker space and that STEM person could really grow into a new special over time. I think there's, watching the kids on the street playing, there's certainly a need for that engineering sort of teaching, especially at those upper levels. And then my other question was about, you presented a few needs here. I'm wondering if there's a wish that got left on the cutting room floor when you were putting this together.
Can't really think of one. I mean, when you talk about, I've wanted a full-time makerspace teacher or a STEM teacher for a few years now. In fact, I've thought, wouldn't that be fun to do that? Because my favorite time of the day is when I'm up in makerspace with the kids. It's just, you see their creativity. So maybe a full-time STEM teacher, like you're saying, but I wouldn't want to put someone in until we had a solid plan. I don't think that would be responsible, but, and I guess my wish list is to have, someone come in and get all new floors. And I can make a big wish list, but I also like to be responsible too. So that answer your question, Paul?
It does.
Okay.
All right, Paulise.
Brian, this is more of a Brian question, but so Larissa was talking about the social workers and the difficulty in locating suitable people. And the salary that we've identified, I think, is a base salary of $66,410. And just for the benefit of the newer members, that, as Ms. Daw has pointed out, is a master's plus 6. And I'm just wondering, going forward, if we're we have the need for the social worker, could we drop the requirements to a master's plus 2 or even a bachelor's plus X, so that we could get candidates to fill the slots? Because I think it's more important to have the slots filled than to have them go without.
Yep. So the M6, and Catherine called it out in her budget, as you noted, that's a placeholder for a salary on the pay scale. There's nothing for a requirement there. So each job, if you're a classroom teacher, you only need a master's, and then to get your professional licensure, bachelor's, and then you need to get your master's within 5 years. Someone who's coming in as an LICSW is going to have an MSW likely, so they're already going to have their master's. So that's more of a financial placeholder, if you will, to plug into the budget. And then, there's a salary contingency line that we carry about 150,000 across the entire district of $25 million in salaries that we use as a, right, some things come in good. Sometimes you budget for an M60 with benefit, I'm sorry, an M6 with benefits, and someone comes in as a master's and don't take benefits, and so they're saving, so it ebbs and flows all the time. But that's not a requirement, so we hire based on the need. And then, yeah, just a placeholder for that figure. So other questions for Beth?
Yes, I have a couple myself.
Sure.
I want to thank you, Beth. I believe that the social worker has been one of the items that the schools have needed for a long time. As long as I remember, social worker has been on any one of the 3 elementary schools for a number of years, especially right now with the pandemic, the way it's, I mean, it was on the budget long before the pandemic hit. So I think that's something that we really need to look at to help make sure that all the 3 schools have the coverage that they need. Being an engineer myself, I very highly on this, and I'm glad to see that all 3 schools are looking at the STEM maker. I mean, it is just, to me, it's going to excite the kids to want to do something like that. It gives them something to look forward to going to school. It gives them something to build on as they go into the middle school and high school. I know that I myself had, when I was kind of disappointed when the high school got rid of engineering for women and manufacturing for women. It was all classes for young ladies. And my company made it a point to bring these girls in to show how many engineers there are, that you can be, all the different types of engineering that there could be. So I think it's a great way to start this, just to have, just listening to have these kids working on 3D printers. I work on them myself. I mean, I'm like a little kid myself because it's so amazing what you can build with these things. I mean, now people have them at home and all that. We're working on getting one at home as well. So I just think it's a wonderful way to start exciting these young minds to do this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've had the reading interventionist in there for a number of years. Having a child myself that struggled with reading and writing, it is so important, especially now, for us to make sure that we're building these classes and things for these students, because reading is the gateway to everything in their life. My son had a reading problem, but not a math. He was great in math, but you're exactly right. If they can't read the word problems, doesn't matter how great they are in math, they won't be able to understand what they're reading and get the concept of what is going on with that particular problem. So one other question that I have is on page 3, where you have FY22, the numbers were 0, and now in FY23, you have numbers there. Is this a membership based, or is that just a one-time, or every year you're going to need that same amount?
Is that where, under instructional technology, where are you looking exactly, Linda?
Instructional tech, where the numbers were 0 and now you have line items there. I was just wondering if that was like a membership fee, or is that every year that's how much that particular item is going to be?
No, we're not really utilizing those anymore. So that's why it's at 0. You're talking
No,
about,
it was 0 for last year and now there's a number in there.
It's like
oh,
humble books, Linda.
yeah, that's because that's something new that we're using. We didn't have it last year. And
I was just wondering if that was like a membership fee for those particular programs, or if those were just going to be the numbers, how much it costs to run that program for this year.
I think you're looking at empowering writers in the 3P learning.
Let me make sure I'm on NES there. Yeah.
It's
It's,
supplement page 3.
The database of children ebooks, the writing curriculum,
Yeah.
online math program.
Yeah, we didn't have that last year, so that's what it would be to implement that for this year. And now I know I had myself confused earlier. I saw the online level readers and online, and I was thinking online math league. Then I realized down below I have online math league. That's the 3P learning math seeds in the online program. That's a program that really reinforces the math skills that we've been using in grades K and 1.
Yeah, I think just my question was, Beth, is that a membership? Like you would have to pay that membership every year, or I know on some
Yes, I would
programs,
say yes, yes.
it was like every 2 years, like this amount was for 2 years.
I think they're yearly, Linda.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's all my question was.
All right.
Thank you very much.
And Linda, I invite you to be a guest in the makerspace room when I open it at any time if you'd like to.
Oh, anytime you need help in there, you just let me know. I'll be there.
All right, great.
All right, no other questions for Beth? Beth gets to field. And just so everyone knows, so we do Newbury, Rowley, Salisbury. We do it alphabetically. It's not because Newbury is the best and Rowley's the not second best and Salisbury's the worst. It's just always been, we do it alphabetically so no one can contest the order with which we do this. So now as I'm talking, there were 2 more questions. Oh, there's 3 questions. Oh, I don't know which hand I saw first. I think I saw Paul.
I think Paul was first.
So Kyle, did you notice that Linda volunteered her services for the engineering, but she didn't volunteer anything for you?
I'm waiting for a nice specialty accounting course to come up that I'll gladly.
No, I'm talking about Linda, the bus driver.
That's
She
right.
volunteered her services for you.
So got the license. Who else had a question? Narissa.
It was more a comment. I feel awful because I do feel like this lands majority on Beth every year. And I fully understand that alphabetical thing, but I think you should switch it up because I feel bad for Beth every year.
It's fine, Narissa. It's fine.
You've got big shoulders, but it feels like we load you up every year with questions.
We'll switch it up next year. Just kidding, Beth. You can always go first.
I really don't mind going first.
She really does. Like, she's pretending she loves going first. Awesome. Well, thank you, Beth. Appreciate it. So we'll move on. Where did Nicole go? Nicole's here. Oh, there she is. So Nicole from Pine Grove School, you ready?
I'm ready. All right. Hello, everyone. I know, Beth, I feel bad for you because we requested a lot of the same things. As you can tell, we've been working closely together, the 3 of us. So she definitely had to front load everything, but hopefully some of the things that I add to it will bring it to fruition a little bit more. So with that, let's start on page 1, the executive summary. So at Pine Grove, we are also asking for an increase of the reading interventionist position from 0.5 to 1.0. A lot of the same reasons of what Beth had said, but some of the other things that I wanted to add to that is, and I know that I put it into my executive summary, but 2 major factors that I think are really important, actually even 3, is that obviously early literacy skills are so important. It's what's going to indicate how they're going to be readers in the future. And some of the things that I did talk about is the reduction in intervention support is concurrent with the increase of the student needs that we're seeing. The development of early literacy skills in the current 2nd grade in particular has been impacted by various consequences of the pandemic, such as the remote learning and frequent absences. So this is the cohort that we've had to really do some major adjustments this year. For 1/3 of the cohort, when we started doing our screening, they actually were intensive in oral reading fluency at the beginning year of the benchmarking. And that is something that we're very concerned about. So what we had to do in that particular cohort The foundation assessment supported the placement of these students. We had to put them in level 1 foundation instruction, and we had to use a lot of our special education teachers, and not having this interventionist made it difficult to meet all the students' needs. And as we all know, it's these early literacy skills that we really have to zone in on. So then maybe we'll see a decrease of what they need in the upper grades. We're seeing more students struggling in reading and writing, but cannot effectively offer the appropriate support because of the lack of staffing. The reading specialist has to absorb this reduction in intervention support by increasing the number of interventions that she provides daily, thus decreasing the amount of coaching support that she can provide to teachers. As we all know, Massachusetts had just passed new dyslexia laws that require screening and appropriate support for students struggling to acquire basic literacy skills. The screening requires significant amounts of time from the reading specialist, in which turn takes away from the time instructing students and working directly with teachers. Additional supports from a full-time reading interventionist will allow us to meet the dyslexia guidelines. So not only are we faced with the issues and challenges that we face with the pandemic, but we also have the dyslexia guidelines that we are now having to follow as well. So it all falls on these early literacy skills that we need to make sure that we're zoning in on now, and having a full-time reading interventionist will help us with this. I think Beth had also talked about that the district employs 3 Wilson and Orton Gillingham tutors to meet the needs of the dyslexia population at PGS. With an anticipated increase in the identification of full-time qualified reading interventionists will prove essential in fully complying with the dyslexia laws and providing appropriate intensive instruction. And then I did want to add that our current kindergarten class is 68 students currently. So that cohort will be going to 1st grade next year. So we are going to be increasing from 2 first grades to 4 first grades. So having this additional reading interventionist in really being able to provide these interventions with these early literacy skills will only help us in the future to try to create these strong readers in the future. Let's see, I think that was it. So those were a lot of the reasons that I felt and our school council felt was important to have a full-time reading interventionist. All right. The second position addition is the social worker position, same as Beth. I did a little research because, as we all know, we always talk about the multi-tiered system of support, and you can even go on to DESE's website and they have this self-assessment that you can take to look at your individual school to make sure that you're meeting all the needs of the students and so forth. So if you look at a guidance counselor, and we have, and I know I always talk about it, we at Pine Grove, we have an amazing guidance counselor, and Kyle Campbell will do anything for any student at any time. If it's not his time to meet with a student, it doesn't matter. He will meet with them. It doesn't matter. But what we're finding with Kyle is that he's our tier 1. So he's basically like the guidance counselor that is like a classroom teacher. And so if you're a classroom teacher and students need support, then you have an interventionist that can come in. You have a special ed teacher. If they're at tier 3, they can provide interventions for students. But with Kyle, all you have is Kyle, and he's tier 1. And so Kyle is that person that can, take things on an emergency basis and meet students on an emergency basis and work with students on a daily basis and so forth. But with a social worker, that's somebody that we feel can dig deep. There's someone that can go beyond the confinement of the classroom, and they have different education and they have different expertise. So we're looking for somebody that can basically be like that tier 2 system with Kyle. So that's the difference of the social worker. They can, go into if it's poverty or homeless or trauma or whatever it is. And it's not that Kyle can't do it, because he will, or Elise and myself will do it. We're constantly working with kids. And I can't remember who asked it before, if they thought it was going to be temporary or they thought it was going to be long-term. I agree with Brian that I think it's going to be long-term, because no one knows the effect of this pandemic. No one ever lived, in a pandemic and the effects that it's going to have in the future and so forth. So I just think a social worker at this time and at any time is so important to meet the needs of all of our students. And therefore, we're doing that whole multi-tiered system and be able to meet the needs of everyone. So that was the social worker. And then the third request was the 0.3 STEAM teacher that Beth had talked about. The three of us met, we did talk about it. We talked about what we thought, you know, this particular educator could do. And one thing that I want to add with what Beth was saying is that I was doing some research on, you know, STEAM teachers and so forth. And they were talking about how, you know, 21st century in engineering, in kids, and being able to grasp those critical thinkers and getting their critical thinking skills going. But one thing that I envision is that, you know, throughout the years and years prior and so forth, kids would take Spanish and kids would take French and a foreign language and so forth. But with, you know, with this engineering type of teacher, they could do something like coding. And so they say with coding, you know, is they're learning the language of the computers. They're learning to communicate with the computers. So it's almost like another whole language. Instead of playing the video games, they're going to be able to build the video games and, you know, work in groups together and collaborate and just become problem solvers and so forth. So to be able to zone in on that other whole part of a student that they're not allowed to. Well, it's not that they're not allowed to, but they're not given the opportunities. And I just think this is just a door that could be knocked wide open for us to really, really, really grasp some of those skills and interests that some of our kids are not doing right now. We ran a after school program with engineering. It was one we offered it back in the fall, and it ran until about the holidays. And it was engineering, and the kids did robotics and so forth. It was one of our clubs that was totally full within, like, I don't know, the second day. So, you know, there's an interest there. And we have this beautiful STEAM lab that, you know, we're doing science projects in there and so forth. And I've talked to Beth tons of times and Catherine about the maker space and getting ourselves up there and available and so forth. And I just think there's just so many endless opportunities with a teacher like that. And I think the kids are ready. So, but that was some of the reasoning to why I wanted those 3 positions. All right. Should I move on? All right.
I think it makes sense. Everyone seemed to ask their questions at the very end. So
okay.
Just keep.
All righty. All right, so moving on that same page, they do talk about the capital spending. And I will say, because, and I had put a small note in there, because of the renovation project that was completed in 2019, that I do not have any capital spending requests because the building's being maintained and we're taking good care of it. So that's always a plus. Moving on to page 3, current and projected enrollments. Same as what we had talked about before, preschool and kindergarten. We did look at the census. It looks like now I did request to stay at, or we're projecting that we're probably going to need 4 kindergartens again. That's what we're projecting we're going to need, because right now with the census, it looks like we're up to between, I think when I had talked with Sue True, the administrative assistant, we were already up to 54. I have been getting many emails about parents that are asking about preschool and kindergarten registration. And I would be shocked if we don't get up to 4. So we're keeping it at 4. We are in first grade going to second grade. We go down from 2 first grades up to 2 second grades. So obviously there's going to have to be some shifts in teachers at Pine Grove, because we went from kindergarten 4, where currently we only have 2 first grade. So next year we're going to have 4 first grade. And we're going to have 2 second grade. So that's a huge shift to go from 4 to 2. So there is going to be some shuffling with teachers and so forth. At this point, I'm not requesting any additional teachers, keeping basically the things the same. I think that the numbers are pretty solid. Going into 4th grade, we do have 15, 15, and 16. But, you know, obviously talking about keeping things small, being able to meet the needs of all of these students, social, emotionally, academically. I just feel like this is a good number for where to stay with these current numbers. So that's classrooms. And moving on to page 4. I do want to actually, Kyle Warren and I were talking earlier today, and I did want to point out that there is a mistake on this page with the, let's see, I did not add the 0.3 STEAM teacher. So for the total proposed FTE, I had 70.9, it should be 71.2. And the proposed new changes in position should be 1.8. That is one, and it's already been, I believe Kyle can confirm this, that's already been changed, right, Kyle?
Correct, yep. So we updated the file, and then on the website where these are posted, we'll update that tomorrow morning with any corrections that come out tonight.
Okay. I did put under guidance professional from this year, went to FTE 1.0 to 2.0. Same with the math reading professional 2.5 to 3.0, which would reflect the 0.5 reading interventionist that I have requested. And then obviously the 71.2 would account for the 0.3 STEAM teacher. Okay. And then I think page 5, I think I've done a lot of talking about those, so I don't think I need to. A lot of the things that I had spoken about, the bullet points that I had talked about are written in the personal budget request continued on page 5. Page 6. I also make note on page 6 where it says the new total FTE at the bottom. That should be 71.2 and not 70.9. Page 7, I think across the board with the 3 elementary schools, obviously we did have an increase due to inflation and high demand of supplies and so forth. So you will notice small increases. I think it was 8% that we went up on most line items. They had not been touched in a few years. So that's why we did go up on some of those line items. And that's page
Nicole,
7.
can I just have Kyle, because I know that was something that all the principals worked with Kyle on. So is that a flat rate? Kyle, can you just speak to that?
Exactly, yeah. So we looked at, walked through each of the individual line items and the costs, the vendors' costs that were outlined there, and to see, okay, what do these look like for next year? Certainly, there's some areas where we know the costs are level, so we didn't apply that 8%. But if it was purchasing pencils and notebooks and the copy paper, that's where that increase was reflected.
Thank you.
Yeah. And even in that reflection, there ended up being a change of 5,418. And that was page 7. Page 8, I briefly talked about this, the description of the capital improvement. I am not making any big requests or any requests there because of the renovation project that was completed in 2019. And then moving on, page 1 of the supplement. Same thing, we looked at the different line items and did the increase of 8%, making a prediction of where we thought there may be changes, unless it was something that we 100% already knew about the price of it.
And can I add too, on these, there's certain areas where you have quotes. We know exactly what the cost is going to be next year. And then there's other areas where there's incidentals. So the $1,000 for principal equipment maintenance, you'll see that at Pine Grove, that amount was left level. So we, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Especially when you look at, you look at the line item with school specialty and WB Mason. It's when I was looking at the budget last year, obviously the budget of my first year being principal was the budget that had been used the year before when Christine Nealon was principal. And the teachers, and I know Beth touched upon on this quickly, is that the teachers with their supplies is like you're noticing all those prices are going up for all their school supplies, but the teachers were getting the same exact amount of money that I was getting 4 years ago when I was a classroom teacher. So, the prices have gone up, but they have not gotten any more money. So it just makes sense that we need, due to inflation, that we need to be upping those amounts. And so we're hoping that the teachers will be able to get the things that they need for their classrooms. And page 2, same thing, instructional materials, just brought that up by 8% because I wasn't sure exactly what the exact quote would be for all of these things going through. The geodes, that was something that we added that is some of the readers that the teachers use to do with their guided reading groups, try to bring in decodables with science of reading and so forth. Foundation, obviously consumables. Beth had touched upon the different hubs for the empowering writers and so forth. Sometimes it's hard to predict of, Newberry might look very different than Pine Grove, depending on how many teachers are using it and so forth. So we sent out a survey for that. Foundation materials, obviously that was a bigger increase because once again, there's a hub that teachers can log into and they can use, and we're predicting that those teachers will be using that. So that was the increase on that line. Let's see, went up on laminating a little bit. Page 3, same with special education testing protocols. Went up on that, obviously testing materials, the workbooks that they need for testing special education students and so forth. Those prices have gone up as well. Specialized batteries for the projectors. We do at Pine Grove, we have these batteries that have to be replaced in our projectors, and some of them are microphones, and those can be a bit expensive. So I believe that Kyle and I made an adjustment there to try to supplement these batteries. It's usually 2 years. Every 2 years, these batteries have to be replaced, and they are expensive. So we're in year 3 now, so all the batteries seem to be having to be replaced right now. So that would be something different with Pine Grove. And then health services, the increase there, the 8%. And that's it. I don't know why I get so nervous. Like I get so nervous presenting. I'm like a mess until the end, and then I'm fine.
So you
Can I do it
didn't say
again?
anything. You're totally
Can I start
good.
again?
Then you totally blow your cover.
I know.
All right. Who do I see on my list? I see Susanna.
Hi, Nicole. I think
Hi.
you did a great job.
Thanks.
And I get nervous too, so don't worry, because this is my first time doing this whole stuff. So I did want to make a couple of comments, really just as being the parent of a child who went through the very early screening in second grade, at the end of second grade, and it was due to their reading specialist who used the screener. I think it was the first time the Wilson screener had enough specificity in order to pick up the dyslexia that he had. So he has had services all through, and even during the end of the pandemic, not the end of the pandemic, end of 4th grade, he came out reading at 4th grade level. So that, I think, is it. I don't want to get emotional because I tell you what, it brings tears to your eyes when you see a kid that's struggling that hard. So I would say, when we've talked about these reading interventionists and seeing what work they can do is just amazing. So I also this is a gray area for me, but there was some chatter out in the community around sort of new parents coming in. What are the schools like? It was very specific to PGS. And there was some past parents who've gone through all this and said, my kid had to go out of place, out of district. And I think we know which school we're talking about. Now, I haven't had to worry about that, but had he not had those services, I have a feeling that I would have had to be covering them myself, or I would have had to push for, you know, a lot of advocacy to get him what he's getting. So, and also it's scalable in the sense that it was done over the summer. So for summer school, he doesn't, you know, you can do it. If you're sitting in a cabin in Maine, you can do it, you know, anywhere. So I think, you know, it's really been a testament to the program that you guys have really, you know, piloted and, you know, brought to light. So I think it's a great idea to support those kids. And then the other one was, again, we talked about the STEM program. I have, again, the experience of having one that's just gone into middle school who did have the, who with Narissa, we were the sort of the Science Fridays, although I didn't get to do it because then we were shut down. But, or actually I signed my husband up because I would be too scared to do what they were doing. But that said, there's the fifth grade teacher at the time, she owned this. And we've seen that since her, you know, because of the necessary movements that had to take place, we're missing it in fifth grade, because now my other two have moved into fifth grade and they're asking for it and they're missing it. So, and again, it's a scalable program if it's shared across 3 different schools. I think it's, so those are just my comments. And I just wanted to just put them out there for you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susanna. When we keep talking about the STEM teacher, I keep thinking of the wellness coordinator. Remember this time last year, we were thinking,
Oh, yeah.
you need to talk about a wellness coordinator, not sure, you know, we're still trying to figure this out, talk about it a long time, and you know, right? Everyone on this call knows what has happened in a very short amount of time by putting Cara Briley into place. So I think it's the same thing. If, you know, if you build it, they will come, and we would like 5 teachers in a year from now. So anyhow, Narissa.
Thanks, Brian. So Nicole, your reading specialist description is far more complex than what I see in the other elementary schools. One of my questions is, when I see a 0.5 to a 1.0, I very often think you're taking someone that's already there and giving them a full-time position.
Mm-hmm.
Does this person that's already in that position, the 0.5, have those skills to take on what the tutors are providing right now, those skills and certifications? Or would this, I guess, what's your intent there?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. No, it isn't. It's not, that's not my intentions for her. You know, her intention is that she would like to be a full-time teacher.
Mhm.
And no, she would not have the credentials of somebody that we're looking for that particular position. She's actually going into the area of special education. So yeah,
So
I know exactly. Yeah. So no, that isn't. My goal would be to hire someone with, obviously with reading as part of their degree and their specialty and so forth, because what we're envisioning is an interventionist that can work, whether it be, you know, giving assessments or knowing how to run a geodes group or knowing how to, whatever it is. We're looking for somebody that has the credentials to be a reading interventionist, someone that's going to help to move these students. And no, that's not who, but I will tell you that particular person has been doing a ton of things for this particular position. But no, that wasn't the goal of doing it, of asking for it.
So I didn't just hear you say Wilson and Orton Gillingham certification. So are you intending to keep that tutoring separate?
No,
Or-
I'm just giving like examples of things that, you know, I'm not looking for someone that's, you know, Wilson certified, but if someone applied, that definitely that perks your interest, or someone that has experience in Orton Gillingham, or somebody that has experience in, you know, the reading program that we're doing, or whether it's Dibbles. Those are the things when you interview people that perk your interest of wanting to hire them. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So just to go back to, because I'm trying to think of positions and where things kind of fit into categories,
Mhm.
would you, if you find the person who doesn't have those particular certifications, would you still be keeping on the 3 tutors, or using as a contracted service, I guess, probably the 3 tutors that you've been using currently?
I think every year we have to look at things individually. it would depend on how many students we have in that require Wilson, or how many students require Orton Gillingham, and we work closely with Shannon with all of that. So I don't know how many kids next year, or so it's hard to be able to predict that. And I will tell you with the you know, if we do have 4 kindergartens and then we have 4 first grades, there's a lot of different shifts that, you know, are going to happen. And then teachers come to you and they, you know, oh, I would love to move to this grade. So that shifts everything. And then if we're able to add another section of preschool because of those numbers and so forth, it's hard to predict of where we're going to be.
Okay, so this needs to be more flexible than we're adding a halftime and moving away from some of the tutors. This could be a combination of adding a halftime and keeping tutors, or not.
Yeah, tutors are always an add-on, right? So
Yeah.
if we have more students who need those direct OG or Wilson tutoring, then we have the staffing, we put tutors in place, but it's not, those aren't long-term positions.
I
Those
understand
fill
that.
in.
They're all funded by the budget, right?
Absolutely.
So I guess that's where my question is when I'm looking at these as budget buckets, right? Are we pulling from one and putting into another? And I think the answer is probably no. Is that accurate?
No, definitely not. Those were not my intentions of when I'm asking for this. It was more like having those conversations where, you know, we're in a pandemic and I'm looking at, you know, and I'm seeing it at an every grade level, and I'm only being very particular with 2nd grade is because I can really explain it, where this particular cohort, 1.5 years, you know, we had, you know, foundations, and there's, my gosh, 1/3 of them are all in level 1. And so we've had to create smaller groups. And then I made personal phone calls to every single parent to let them know where their child was. I did that personally because I didn't want anybody, well, they're going to be in special ed now and all that. It's just, it's what that cohort needs, and who knows what it's going to look like next year. But with the dyslexia guidelines, with the pandemic, we just have to zone in on these early literacy skills. And as a principal, I have to do what it takes to, you know, to get those solid foundations built. So.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I'll say about that is Orton Gillingham and Wilson services, that need can change over the course of a year.
Right.
Whereas if we hire a position, we are committing for a year. It might be that after a half a year, some kids are transitioning off and more on until we still have the need. So it's, to Kim or to Nicole's point, it's not a trade-off, but.
Right. And even with the dyslexia guidelines, you know, the reading intervention, it's a lot more screening that she has to do. And that takes away from these kids that need the interventions. And when you're even talking about interventions, sometimes you're looking, you know, Elise and I are running an intervention enrichment group right now. It's like you just all hands on deck. So whatever we can do to help these kids is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think I was just confused by the last sentence, which basically says the district currently employs these 3 tutors with an anticipated increase in the identification of full-time qualified reading interventionists will prove essential. That almost made it seem like it was right, this is where we are right now, but this is what we need as in the future. But in reality, it's we need what we have right now, and we're going to need more in the future.
No, I can see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah, but yeah, I just don't know what it's going to look like next year. Like Brian said, it could change in an instant, you know?
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions. I had the same thing highlighted about currently the district employs 3 Wilson tutors. Are those 3 tutors just for Pine Grove, or are they utilized in the other 2 elementary schools as well?
Shannon might be able to speak to that. I'm assuming that those particular 3 work at Pine Grove, Shannon? I don't know.
Yeah, we have tutors throughout the district that if they're needed at the different schools, if they need to deliver services, if they're available, they'll work at any school. They're not assigned to a school.
But that's not 3 full-time tutors.
No, they're just exactly what you
part-time.
said,
Yeah.
Brian. If a student comes up and they need services, can't fit it in the schedule, then we reach out to a tutor.
You might be adding 4 hours here. Yeah. I just want to make sure people were clear that that's not 3 full-time positions
Yeah.
over at Pine Grove School.
And we actually, we have 2 teachers that are going through Wilson training right now too.
Mhm.
So they're going to be completing them as well, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but aren't there a number of teachers possibly at Salisbury Elementary that are Wilson trained?
There are a lot of teachers across the board that are Wilson trained. So it's a matter of, do we have them and do they have the capacity within their schedule to be able to provide the services? So as Shannon was describing, if we have a handful of people that are kind of filling in a schedule because we have this opening a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that the services are needed, I'm making this up. And there's a 2-hour block on each of those days where it's needed, or it's every morning from 9 to 10 where we need the services. But the teachers who are Wilson certified or Gillingham certified are not able to service the students. That's when we bring in a tutor.
Okay.
So it would be for 5 hours that we bring in that person to do that block.
Okay. This could be for anybody to answer. Due to the new dyslexia law, do you have to bring in more people to help to screen some of these students?
Do you want to speak to that?
It doesn't say you have to. The students have to be screened at specific times of the year. And then if a student is found that needs an intervention, they have to receive the intervention. It all depends on the staffing you have, what they're trained in and all that.
So,
Does that answer?
so because of this new law, do you think that the reading interventionalists that the schools are asking for, do you think that's partially some of the workload that they would like to give to the reading interventionalist?
I'll let the principals answer that.
Obviously the dyslexia guidelines do come into place, but if you read those guidelines, a lot of the guidelines are those early literacy skills that you just have to make sure that they're mastered and they're solid and so forth. And what we're seeing right now is that, that 2nd grade cohort, these students that have never been in school, that have, they're huge cohorts. And so this is where we really need to zone in and so forth. So I don't think that the dyslexia guidelines, I'm just going to shut my door because the custodian's singing and vacuuming. I'm sorry.
The beauty of remote meetings. You think it's the people at home that have the problem.
Sorry. All of a sudden I could hear whistling and singing and then he's coming by. Sorry.
Well, let me just say I think that's great to hear that your janitor is loving what he's doing by singing. And
He has his AirPods in, so he can't even hear me or anything. So he's whistling.
Listen, I understand about early reading interventions. I was just trying to maybe highlight that because of the dyslexia mandate now, that it's probably going to reiterate why you need a reading interventionalist for more time than what you usually do.
And I think I put that in there, that after
speaking,
speaking with our reading specialist, Shauna, she said that of what I had written. She said that because of the additional screening that she has to do and trying to coach teachers about the dyslexia guidelines and making sure people are doing exactly what they're supposed to, that has put a lot more on her. So Linda, you're 100% right. I misunderstood you. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate that. And again, you're speaking to a parent who had a child who had dyslexia, and the district was new at doing this. So it didn't help my son until later in like 8th grade. So for me, I think it's great to see that the district is putting these things into place for students at a younger level to identify these issues. Because just like Susanna says, it is so important to get these kids to reading at a younger level. And when your child doesn't read and write at a younger level, it's very hard as they move up into the middle school and high school.
Right.
It just makes it harder for them to do it. And when you do see them finally get it, finally understand it, and everything starts to come around for them, it is heartwarming to know that they're able to do this now, and you just want to hug the teacher who has helped
Right.
your child. So I think it's great. Also, going back to the STEM program where you were talking about coding, there are free coding programs that you can get into to help our students get into the coding.
Is that
And I
good? Is it like called Scratch, or I know there's one?
It's Scratch, MIT, and there's one other one. In fact, my husband was just texting me these things because I was asking him to look at my notebook that was out there because I didn't want to get up and shut my it's Create Learn US Coding for Kids.
Oh.
So there's plenty of coding. So once you do get this up and running, I can send you a whole bunch of free coding things that can be used for the kids.
That'd be great.
That's all that I had for my questions as well.
Thank you.
I think that was everyone. I don't see any more questions. Thought I saw Susanna's hand raised, but no, I don't see Susanna. So not seeing any questions. Very good. Well, Nicole, thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And so last but not least, alphabetically Salisbury, the third in alphabetical order. So we have Catherine Daw. So Catherine, welcome.
Thank you very much. I am going to begin. I have a bunch of thank yous that I need to say because although I've done a budget before, working at the elementary school budget, it's entirely different. And you would think, I would have thought it should have been easier, but it wasn't necessarily easier to do. So I definitely want to thank Beth and Nicole for your assistance with this, because that was huge throughout the process. And then if I didn't have Anna and Shannon and Kyle guiding me through the whole process, I wouldn't have been able to complete this. So I just want to say that I think it's really important that, and I was very fortunate to have all of you there. So thank you very much. So a lot of what I'm going to say you've already heard, so that's very fortunate for me. Thank you, Beth and Nicole. One of the first things I am asking for as well is a social worker for Salisbury Elementary. Mine is a little bit different in that I do have a social worker here, and she's great and working very hard with the guidance counselor, and they do a great job. I'm looking for a social worker whose primary role will be to run classes for the students and build their social and emotional competencies. We're finding this year, as everybody has been talking about, with students being away from school for the past couple of years, they're back in education, but they're not ready to learn. And we've had, just like every other school, but we've had a lot of issues this year where we've had to spend time teaching students how to just be good citizens and how to get along with their peers, how to treat each other, all the things that you need to get along in life, to be a little bit more self-aware, to be able to make decisions that are based on fact and based on what's best, to develop relationship skills, and just be a little bit more aware of what's going on around them. Our social worker and our school counselor did go into the 5th grade classrooms. They created a mini curriculum, and it was, I think, for 5 weeks, and they went into each 5th grade classroom and delivered this mini curriculum. And it was well received by the teachers and by the students, which made me realize that, you know what, this is something that we need to really be able to offer to our students on a much more regular basis and a much more formal basis. Right now, we're not able to take the time to really address those needs with our students. And being able to provide a social worker whose primary goal will be able to be in classrooms working with the students and with the teachers and parents and administrators, I think will go far to change the culture in the building and to really help the students become the best students that they can be. I would imagine without a doubt, in addition, that social worker would also be working with our current social worker and guidance counselor, providing individual counseling for students and working with parents as well. That was on page 1. On page 2, at the bottom of the page is my request for the 0.3 STEM teacher as well. This year, we never had a makerspace. We were just able to get one up and running probably the middle of December. And the kids, it's a very small group of students that get to go in. They get to go in right now during their wind time. So if that makerspace is what that student needs during wind time, then the teacher signs the student up to have access to that makerspace room. We've done a really good job in cleaning up the room and making it organized so students can find the materials that are available to them. Right now, we're staffing it with some of our specialists, and it's open almost every period, every day, and kids are signed up by their teachers to go. I would love to expand on that. The kids are loving it. As Beth said, they run up the stairs to come to the makerspace area, and they get right to work. I mean, they say hello and then they start talking to each other, which is another benefit because they don't really have that time to without guidance and without structure, collaborate with each other and talk about ideas and let's try this and let's do this and what would happen if we did it this way. And it's great to see the kids really working that way and getting along and not fighting when they disagree. You know, they're learning how to be social beings together with an adult there, but not necessarily guiding the process and running the process. And then if you will bear with me, I don't know why I did this, but on page 5, if you could jump to page 5, I do have another request for staffing, which didn't fall in my executive summary. So I just want to jump to that. I am making a request for another special ed teacher. Over the past year, we have seen that a number of students are being identified and being put forth for special ed testing. And that number has really significantly increased for us. And it's been due to a number of factors. Student identification has been limited over the past few years. And that there's a lot of factors that played into that. And right now we're seeing that we need to reach out and we really need to address the needs of the students and not just try to put Band-Aids on it. We now have a really formalized IST process, which is keeping Jane Keeler so busy. She doesn't have a minute in her day, but it's a real formalized process for teachers to make a request for, let's find out what this student needs. How can we help this student? And then from there, though a number of those students, if you look on page 5, as of January 1st, there were 39 referrals to the IST process, which is a pretty high number for the first few months of school. And we, in the past, we haven't had a formal process. So it's good that the teachers are using it, and it's good that it's a process that's working. Out of those 39, 11 have been referred for special ed testing. So again, that is a higher number than normally we would be seeing because we just didn't have a referral process that could go through the steps. We've also had 3 additional students who have been referred for special ed testing through the 504 process. So in that chart, as of February 28th, according to students that are currently waiting to be tested, we're going to have 89 students who will be tested for special ed. And that's a 23% of the population, which that's up from when we were at 14 and 16% of students even being tested. So a lot is happening in the special ed department and a lot of good things are happening. but we're now realizing that we're not going to have the staff to meet the needs that come out of the special ed process. Additionally, we're hoping to begin next year implementing a co-teaching model where special ed teachers would work with the regular ed teachers and they would co-teach in the classroom. Right now, our staffing wouldn't allow for that to happen, but we do have some special ed teachers who are, and regular ed teachers who are interested in moving forward with that instructional plan. So we do have a professional development plan going forth next year that would, excuse me, which would put teachers in training so that they could be trained, special ed teachers and regular ed teachers, to implement the co-teaching model. So
excuse me, Catherine, can you just, you say IST, can you just say what IST stands for the new members that are on the committee?
Oh, she froze. She frozen for everyone else, or is that me?
No, she froze.
I'm
Okay.
not sure if that's what you were asking. She was
Oh,
frozen.
we're
So
back.
I'm sorry, Linda.
You were
what did
frozen, Catherine.
I was frozen. No, I was talking.
Just so you're aware, I'm sure you were quite animated, but to all of us.
Okay, so Linda, I didn't hear your question, Linda. I'm sorry.
Okay, for the new members on the committee, they may not know what IST stands for. So if you could.
Yep, instructional support team. So it is a team of teachers, administrators, probably special ed. It's a team of teachers that work with students. And when a regular ed teacher or any teacher sees that a student is struggling in any particular area, they will refer that student to the instructional support team. And that team gets together, looks at the whole picture of the student, where some of the weaknesses are, where are the challenges, and what are some of the things that we can put into place in the instructional support team and that would work to support the student in that team. What happens over time is when they then meet again to see if the student's making progress or if there are additional needs, that's when sometimes those students are then put forth to have special ed testing if they find out that the strategies that are implemented aren't working and we need to do something additional for them. Okay, so going back, that was on page 5. And again, I apologize for that change on the pages. So I'm back on page 3, which are the current projected enrollments. Right now, and again, the same story with the pre-K and the kindergarten. We don't really know yet what that's going to look like. So I didn't put any class sizes in there. At this point, I'm hoping it's not going to be a bigger increase from what we're currently working with, but I don't have a sense of that yet. And I'm not asking for any changes in class sizes or in teachers for what we have, because we're pretty stable in the class sizes moving forward at this point. So the only unknown is going to be the pre-K and the kindergarten. So if we go to page 4, which are the personnel budget requests, the regular ed professional it went up 0.3, and that's the STEM teacher. The special ed professional is the 1.0 special ed teacher that I'm asking for. And then the guidance professional down at 2,700 is the social worker that I'm requesting. So that brought the total proposed full-time equivalent to 71.5. I already went over page 5, so I think we're good with that. And then on page 6 is the social worker, and page 7 is the STEM teacher. Moving on to the supplies and services budget request items. Same as the other elementary schools, some of the line items have gone up approximately by 8% for the same reasons, that there have been an increase in prices and the demand, and it's much more difficult to get those items, and the prices have gone up. So I think my best, so if you notice, principal supplies and materials, again, that's the 8%. Principal equipment, it went up to 1,000. I think we moved a few things around because before it was $41, but we moved some of the items to be categorized a little bit better so they land in the principal equipment maintenance.
And one thing I just want to mention on that too, real quick, is that $1,000 brings Salisbury in line with the other 3 elementary schools as well.
Thank you. Regular ed supplies, I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's an increase mostly in the overall cost of general supplies. My instructional materials, that number has gone up significantly. And when we go to the next page, you'll see that a lot of those items, they were categorized differently so that they were taken out of one category and put into the instructional materials. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Instructional tech supplies, I'm asking for, I think, 3 major items there. And I'll talk about that when we get down to the next one. And health services didn't change except for the 8% increase. So I'm going to go to the supplement page. I think that's the best place for me to get to the explanation of those items. On page 1, nothing significant has changed there except for the 8% increase that we've had. All of that has pretty much stayed the same. On page 2, again, it's the classroom materials that teachers need each year. That has gone up by the 8%, the copy paper and miscellaneous. The bigger change is down at instructional materials and books. And if the big reason for that increase, if you notice under the fiscal 22 budget, the online subscription supporting classroom materials, Makerspace, iReady subscriptions, and Dibbles. In fiscal year 22, we took them out of there and we put them into instructional materials. They seem to fit better there because they were things that classroom teachers were using. And so putting them in instructional materials made a lot more sense to put them there. So the items up above didn't increase, but the online subscriptions for iReady and empowering writers, if we're able to do Makerspace, some of the consumables that we will need for that. Benchmark assessments for iReady and for Dibbles subscriptions were put into that line item as well. On page 3, special ed testing didn't really change. Our copier costs didn't change. The bigger items were down in the tech supplies. And I'm asking for 3 things there. And one of them is a 3D printer. So if the Makerspace does get approved, I would be asking for that 3D printer. I'm asking for a Draper Ultimate folding screen, which I know it sounds so silly, but it is the projector screen that we currently have in our cafeteria that we use for faculty meetings when we have presenters come in. Anything that we want to do, that's the biggest area that we can meet. And there's nothing that can be projected on that screen. The lighting in the room doesn't work. The projector, no matter what projector we've used, the tech department has been great. They've tried different projectors, and it's just the setup of it. And this fall, we had a group come in and they did some presentations with our students, and they brought their own screen, and their own screen was called a Draper Ultimate folding screen, and it projects from the back. And I don't know all the technology of it, but my heavens, you could see everything, you could watch everything. The kids were paying attention because they could actually see what was happening. We had a couple of police officers from Salisbury come today to do a presentation for our 5th and 6th graders, and they did a great presentation. And I warned them in advance that our projection wasn't going to be that great. And it worked out okay, but it really did need help. So it is something that we use all the time, or that we would use all the time if it was something that was efficient. And then the other thing that the teachers have just been really asking for is a new thermal roll laminator. That has been something I've learned at the elementary school that I just was never familiar with before, how much laminating of big things that the teachers do. And I guess the laminator they have now has been around for years, and they've made very good use of it, but it's falling apart. You can't get pieces, and you really, it's not able to be used much. You have to be really, really careful with it. So I have requested that we be able to get another laminator. And then my capital improvements. I think for me, the biggest item right now would be the installation of cameras inside the building. And I have met with the tech people, and I've talked to Kyle about it. We talked about where they would go, and all of that. They don't have a price on that yet, so that line item doesn't have an estimated amount for that, but it is definitely a need. It's a safety. It's a safety concern for us to make sure that all of the areas where, you know, we can see kids, that we have a camera that's available to do that. And then the other ones are capital improvements that over time we're hoping that can be implemented and happen. But I think for me, the cameras are right now the most important look for in terms of capital improvements. And then one last thing before I finish, I do also want to say one more thank you. I can't, working at Salisbury, I can't not recognize the PTA. And I know that has nothing to do with the budget, but I think publicly, I just want to say that our PTA, we are so incredibly fortunate with what they do for the staff, for the teachers, for everybody. And I'm saying that in the budget time because there are things fund-wise that they will say to us, what do you need? We'll work really with you to see if we can get it. So I want to put that out there because we're very fortunate to have the PTA, and I just feel really good about that. So I want to thank them for that. And I think I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. So one thing just to add quickly, middle school, high school, lots of cameras. Pine Grove did the building project. This camera is everywhere. We've added quite a few over the last year and a half or so at the middle school, high school campus. So Kyle's actually reviewing with Greg Kulowick, the tech director and facilities guys for Newbury Elementary as well, because Newbury Elementary and Salisbury Elementary are the two places where we need to beef up our security. So that is something that we believe would qualify, correct me if I'm lying, Kyle, we believe would qualify for health and safety under ESSER funding.
I agree. Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So questions. Linda, do you want to go first? Do you want to go last? I'm not quite sure, but I think she said she wants to go last.
Oh, sorry. I thought I unmuted myself. Yes, I said I'll go last.
Okay, very good.
Boy, you're great at lip reading.
That's what I do. All right, Caitlin.
Hi. So I'm going to say something weird to you, but understand. If I could hug a page from this budget book, it would be page 5 from Salisbury Elementary's. It was one of the main things that I have always looked for. I've had 2 children try to go through the IEP process without any type of process, and it's just a lot of emails and frustration. So when I saw page 5 and IST and this request, I literally got very happy. And so if I was going to hug a page from this, it would be this, which I know sounds weird, but I feel that is something Salisbury would really benefit in having, especially now as they have a process to go forward. And so there's that. And I will speak to the projector situation. I heard about it. I heard about it.
And there's a
So-
need. Yep, there's a need.
Yes, I did hear about it. But I just wanted to thank you because this, I know I'm a budget dork. I've been watching these for years, and then obviously I came onto the committee, and for Salisbury, this one really captured a lot for me and from what I've seen in the community in a very positive way too. So I just really wanted to thank you for that. As a parent, it means the world to me to see this type of budget laid out. And I say that across for NES and PGS too, but Catherine, thank you. And the mention of the PTA, love that because they are great.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I'm muted and talking to myself and wondering why everyone's just looking at me. Narissa, I put your hand down. Narissa, sorry.
Thanks, Brian. I think the first question is probably a Kyle question. I thought we regularly did air quality testing. Is that not something that's?
So we do, yeah, and we perform that testing as it comes up. If there's an issue that arises, like if we see mold in a classroom, then we'll automatically go in and have that testing completed.
Okay. So
And
maybe
that, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, maybe this is a question back to Catherine then, because I didn't understand why that was on her capital improvements list.
I think because we had issues this past summer, I didn't know that it was a regular kind of routine thing. And when I talked to Ron, he wanted to just make sure that that was in there so that we can mitigate any future problems.
Yeah, and jumping in on that too. So we, like she mentioned, we do this if issues pop up, but I think this proposal would be more of a proactive review rather than responding to a particular situation.
Okay, all right, that makes a little more sense. Thank you. And my second question for you, Catherine, last question. When I went through all of one of the things I kind of regularly do when I get these budget lists is I go through and I look at the class sizes, and fortunately was not using my red pen on large class sizes this year, which I've definitely had to do in the past. But I know Beth kind of already addressed the one question I had at Newbury. There are two at Salisbury, and I know you kind of said they're stable grades at this point, but they are quite small class sizes. Are there needs in there that are particularly keep forcing those class sizes to be small? Because 13 and 14 is, I mean, that's quite small.
Yeah.
Especially all at sixth grade for 15 and 16. We've seen pretty regularly, have seen class sizes around 19, 20, 21, 22.
I will speak to the sixth grade for next year. That's the only grade level that has 4 classes. And from what I know and what I've experienced, the current 5th grade was quite a handful. And I think that decision to make those class sizes smaller last year was a very conscious decision, because there was a group of students that really, they wanted to be able to target with a lot more extra supports. So that's the current 6th grade, the current 5th grade going into 6th grade. And then the 2nd grade, I think that probably, I do have to say, I agree with you, those numbers seem small, but I'd rather err on the side of small, especially in those lower grades, when that's the place that we're always talking about, making sure the students are ready and they have the foundations and they have exactly what they need so that they can move into the upper grades with a real strong foundation. And so I didn't want to take that away right now. It didn't feel right to me to make those classes bigger, considering where we've come from the past couple of years. And those students really, they're in 2nd grade. Next year, they're in 2nd grade, this year in 1st. They're really going to need that extra support so that we can make sure that they're ready and that they're going to be strong enough to continue with the curriculum in the upper grades.
I just also note too that we've got, so when we were, whatever, 20 years ago, we had 5 sections per grade level at the schools. Then it was 4 sections. Now it's mostly 3 and 2 with a 4 here and there. So 3 is more the norm. To go from 5 to 4 or 4 to 3, you can make that change with much less of an impact. When you're going from 3 to 2, you can see the numbers there. It's 13, 13, or 14, or 2 sections of 20. On a typical year, we routinely have a handful of first, second graders moving in. So you go from what might turn into maybe 15, 15, 14, and instead that would be a 22, 22. And the difference between 19 in a second grade classroom and 22, 23 is massive. So I think that if we were to add 5 students to that, is what I'm saying, right? So if you add 5 students here, you could easily disperse them across the 3 sections, rather than having 2 sections of 22, 23. That's a significant difference. So.
And I know this year, since January 1st, we've had 8 new enrollments.
Mhm.
And I mean, and that's not, we don't see that stopping. So.
That's
I mean,
very typical.
Yeah, and I think we need to leave room for that, because again, if we go up to the 20, that's really not going to be a good place for those students to be.
And can we say too, so when we get to the district presentation on Thursday, we have some capacity in personnel lines because of this happened, what was it, last year, where there was a 6th grade section, right? And we went back to 2 sections because the numbers couldn't justify us spending the money to have the 3 sections. And now we'll be able to pull that money out, and obviously the district saves the money. So it's just, even if we budgeted it, if the numbers didn't pan out, it doesn't mean we couldn't pull back and actually spend the dollars. So.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have more questions, Dorissa? No? All right, who's next? Paul Goldner.
Really just 2 comments. Listening to the 3 of you talk about the social worker and the STEM position, it was all different, and hearing the needs of the students are not going to be radically different from building to building to building, but the 3 different perspectives on what those needs are, I think just help give us a complete picture of what the social workers can be doing in each of the building and what the STEM position could entail across the 3 different buildings and 3 different perspectives on how the students act and interact with the technology. And then the other thing I wanted to say was just, I'm pretty sure elementary school buildings collapse if they don't have a laminator. So that seems like a high need there. So
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
Unless you've lived in an elementary school, the things you would never know. So true. Who's up? Paul Mayette.
I just had a question about the kindergarten for next year. It says 3 or 4, and I know you said you expected it to stay stable, but if it would arise to need 4, would you anticipate that being necessitating another hire, or do you have a staffing plan for that?
I do not have the staffing. We currently have 3 kindergartners, so I would have to hire another kindergarten teacher.
Thank you. That was my only question.
And if I may jump in too, we have that salary contingency line item at 150,000 that's proposed in the budget. So that would have to come from on an emergency need like that, or an unforeseen need. That would be a typical spot to tap into.
Erin.
Do we have the census data, or can we get the census data for Salisbury so we can try and figure out if we can guesstimate, and that is with a G, guesstimate what the class size is going to look like for next year's kindergarten?
Yep, I can get that.
Okay.
I can tell you historically though, Salisbury census data is the most volatile. So yes, we could absolutely take a guess, but it's rarely anywhere close.
Having grown up here, I completely understand that. So, but I just figured if we had like something to start with, then we could at least try and figure out what it looks like at a starting point.
Okay.
So I don't see any other hands. So over to you, Madam Chair. You're muted, Linda.
Brian, you can't translate what I was saying there? Thank you, Catherine. On page 5, where you have, I'm very happy to see that Salisbury Elementary is pursuing the implementation of co-teaching. I think it's awesome that you guys are doing that, and I commend that the teachers are willing to do that. It is so important to have co-teaching for our students. I mean, I just cannot say that enough. Also, the engineer in me, I think you encapsulated the STEM program very well here, that noting that academic benefits as well as the development of key skills is essential for today's students. I think that encapsulates it beautifully, because students who may not even know that they have that desire to do that, maker space is going to be wonderful for these kids. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to hear how well the 3 elementary schools are working together. I think that is so important for all of our students, for each of you, for professional development, to ping off of each other for different experiences that each of you are having in the schools that may benefit each one of you at a different time in your careers. I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, you have living, breathing professional development. And for you, Catherine, I think it's great that you have those 2 other educators to help you, to guide you through this year and the next couple of years that you'll be as an elementary principal. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say, because I think we've all said it with the other 2 presentations. And again, Beth, I'm sorry that you get the brunt of most of the questions, but it's nice to see that the 3 elementary schools, a lot of their asks are exactly the same. And you use the 3 asks in different variations in different ways. So it helps us to understand the best way and as to why each of the schools need it. I want to thank all of you very much for coming. It was very enlightening to see this. This is a much different budget than we're used to, because now you're only asking for what you really want instead of this big wish list that you wish you could have. At least you're giving us exactly the needs of what you want. I don't have anything else. Brian?
I will just wrap it up by saying thank you to Nicole, Beth, and to Catherine. I appreciate, it's been said several times over the course of this fall, but to see the 3 elementaries working so well together in general, but the 3 women who are here presenting tonight have formed a great working team. And so I'm so appreciative of the work that the 3 of you do on behalf of all of our elementary students. So thank you for your presentations tonight. Just a reminder, we'll hear from Patrick, Al, and Tim tomorrow night, and then the rest of the central office gang on Thursday. And you now have all the information, so I'm hopeful that given where the district buckets that usually are some major downers, usually when we're looking at some of the cost increases, we're in a different place this coming year. So I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to make some strategic new investments and still present a budget that's affordable to the town by also taking a bite out of a lot of the cuts that we made over the previous decade. So I'm feeling hopeful, which isn't often these days. So appreciate everyone's time. And I think I turn it back to you, Linda. I don't think I can call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I called for it, just for the record.
Do I have a second?
It was.
Any questions? All those in favor? We'll do a roll call vote. Erin?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
Paulise?
Yes.
Narissa?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Thank you all very much and have a nice night.
All right. See you all back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Not you, Catherine.